some intuition about how the different system work, then even in PostgreSQL it will be slightly different. So when you use triggers, please read carefully the manuals to understand how all these mechanisms work. So let's see how at least the syntax for DB2, create trigger name before and after as before on a single table. And look at this here, the difference is that we have the possibility to see for each row or for each statement. You immediately have a row level or statement level granularity for each trigger. In addition, you have referencing. Look at this, you have old and new, which is the alias for the row level granularity, and we have old table and new table, which are the equivalent of inserted and deleted of SQL Server. Now with these two tables we are a little bit, and by the way, DB2 is the one that is the, as you know, DB2 is from IBM. You know that IBM drives the SQL standardization process since the 1970s. So it is the one that is more faithful to the SQL standard. So example of, we have here a problem. Let me see. We need to see how these triggers at the intuition, and then we get into the details, interact with the referential integrity. So this is a question that we have not asked yet ourselves. So suppose that we have this supplier, this inventory table which is called part. The part number 1 is supplied by this supplier at this cost. At the same time, you have a distributor for all these suppliers. Okay, for that is these two tables. Of course, there is a referential integrity between the two. What would be the referential integrity between these two tables? Who points? Which column points to which other column? Supplier in part is a foreign key for name in distributor, okay, for that. So suppose, now, since we are little by little reaching the referential integrity, it is important that we understand how referential integrity is defined at SQL level. You remember when you create a table, create table something, and then you, after all the definition, you say that this column references, and what do we do? References what? Remember the syntax of referential integrity? Another table, by the syntax I don't remember by heart, but typically another table, another column. Okay for that? What else we can do? Do you go? Did you ever go a little bit further than this or not? Sorry? I mean, this is the foreign key. On delete cascade, you something never heard about that on delete cascade? That if you have on delete, you have on update also. And what are, instead of cascade, what can we have? Default. What else? Null and restrict. Perfect. This is exactly what we were trying to reach this conclusion. So basically, we have 4 possibilities. We have restrict. We have set null. Set null. We have set default. And then we have cascade. And in addition, we have this possibility for insert, for update, and for delete. Okay, for that, so you can, every single referential integrity that you put on your database, you can fine tune it with one of these keywords for one of these two options, either update or delete. Can cascade. Can someone give examples of this? Let me try to find here. We have an employee table. We have here an employee table, and that points where department table. And then we have a DNO here, referential DNO there. Okay, for this simple referential integrity between an employee who works on a department. Okay, for that. Can someone give me examples of how those restrict, set null, set default, and cascade in this simplistic example? Yes?
I suppose that if you delete a department that is referenced by employee, if it's cascade, you will delete the employee. Right?
So that means, suppose that we close the research department here. If we put cascade, we fire all the employees of this department. Okay, for that, this is cascade. On delete, cascade. On update, cascade, what will we do?
Change the number.
So, for example, it's previously, as even in this case of the ULB, the mnemonic, the identifier of the course change. When we say on update cascade, before it was for cats on cans without the H. Because it was changed the identifier with a new H in the middle, then by cascade all the students that were registered to the old identifier will be automatically registered to the new identifier. This is the update cascade. So, okay for that. Now set default. We are going back to we close the research department. What would be the set default in this context?
So what's default, right, for that table? What you define as default for that?
Very good question. Thank you for that. So I suppose that we put here DNO. We need to say, I don't know, integer default, and we say the default here. And what would be a realistic value for the default to avoid firing all our researchers? Sorry?
Or some other department?
Indeed, typically when we close a department, it is, for example, here at the ULB, we close a department, we assign all these employees to the human resource department. So in that case, the human resource department is obliged to find, to reallocate these employees to another department. So default will be to put the default value that you put into your column.
But is there a possibility to optimize this? I mean, you can use some data and just reassign another department according to that data. I mean, do we have to send to each human resource?
I mean, it depends on policy issues. So you implement the policy of your organization. At the ULB, that will be the policy of the organization, and then you put the identifier of the human resource department. When the department here is deleted, all the employees working on this department, we automatically reassign it to the human resource department. But this is a policy that comes from the organization. You can do whatever you want. Is that your answer?
Yeah, so we can use triggers also, right?
I mean, all this is referential integrity at the create table, and we will see that all these are triggers that are behind the scenes. Each time you compile, you send this create table with this referential integrity. At the time that the create table is processed, all the triggers are generated internally. Okay? So that will be set default, set null. What will be the policy, organizational policy when we put set null?
The value of the department number is set to null.
So they are orphans. They are orphans, and we are looking for how to deal with the orphan later.
Is it actually a good idea using null?
Depends on the organization. I fully agree with you that this is not ideal, but I don't know, suppose that you don't have, you decided to delete or you don't have anymore your Facebook account. Then you put null. And then no, your email account or whatever. So in that case, null, it will be valid for this particular case. And what will be the issue of restrictor? Sorry. What will be the issue of in which what would it mean the restrictor?
So first you need to remove employee then department.
Yes, basically, if it finds a foreign key in another table, it doesn't allow.
So it's a rollback.
Yeah, it's a rollback.
It's a rollback if I cannot delete this department or before I need to reallocate this. So this is another policy. Before allowing the delete of department, make sure that there are no departments anymore, no employees associated to this department anymore. Question?
So if you don't specify anything, is that the default behavior?
That depends on look at the manuals.
It depends on the DBMS.
Yeah, probably there should be something written in the standard SQL, and then you need to verify whether the Oracle respects the SQL standard. Read the manuals.
But do you happen to know if SQL Server does that as default? Because
Typically they are using, I don't remember by heart, but typically they are using, if you say nothing, it is restricted. On which case I don't remember whether it's an update, but the more intuitive choice is done when nothing is said. So now that you understand very well this,
Esteban?
yes.
Just a question from Charlotte over here.
Uh-huh.
When everything on that board you just wrote down, was that essentially SQL syntax, and this over here is DB2 syntax?
No, this is, I mean, there are slight variation, but the same concepts apply for one to another.
But so what were you like? What was that you just wrote down? What was all that stuff?
Standard SQL.
And what is this?
Standard SQL. For example, look at this foreign key supplier. References distributor name. So you are saying the supplier, when you do the create table, you put at the end foreign key supplier, references distributor name.
Okay, so instead of saying set default, you could have said set null, you could have said restrict, you could have said cascade, delete. Okay, thank you.
So these are the four options here. I just want to specify one, but we have seen the three others.
Thank you.
So suppose that we have, let me see what happens. Yes, we have two triggers. Can someone explain me how does this trigger work? Yes?
So you cannot set null to supplier, right?
You have?
You cannot set null to supplier.
Yes.
It send a signal.
I mean, this is a way to show an error in the particular variant of this DBMS.
So does the empty will be recognized as null?
A good question. Is an empty string equal to null and SQL in no? So if you put a quote, that will be an empty string, will be different than null. So look at this. This trigger is simply implementing what you would say.
Warning message.
What is before update of supplier? You have your supplier here into your create table. You put not null here on the create table. Behind the scene, a very simple trigger that is generated automatically. You understand the idea? So triggers are indeed the programming languages for inside the DBMS. So everything declarative that you put in the create table is translated.
Ends up to be a trigger.
Is translated, implemented internally as many potential triggers. And then, of course, you don't have this nice message. You have a cryptic message saying, no, red alert, you cannot do that, but you don't know what happened. Okay with that? So basically everything that is declaratively stated at the SQL level is transformed sooner or later into internal triggers. The problem also is that these triggers should be have a higher priority than your user triggers, okay? So somehow, we mentioned last time that the priority is not implemented into SQL Server. You get the idea. So somehow they need to separate internal triggers from user triggers, and the triggers that manage the referential integrity or not null construct here should be executed before the user triggers. Okay.
So if we wrote a trigger like manually the second way, then it enters the priority list just like every other trigger. But if we use the foreign key syntax, then it will be treated as one priority higher than all the other triggers. Okay, thank you.
So let's have another example trigger. This one is a statement level trigger. Can someone explain in plain English what is this trigger in the first bullet doing?
What does for each statement mean?
I mean, it's a statement level trigger. The previous one was for each row.
Okay.
So every time each row is updated, here we perform an update. After an update on this table part, we finish the update and then it starts working.
So it's actually logging trigger also.
It's indeed an audit trigger which logs. What does it log?
It logs, it's counting rows from old table.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so in plain English terms, without technicalities, what does it? What it would do?
Number of updates.
So it counts how many rows were modified in the transaction.
Is it like an increment ID?
No, it just counts how many. So now that you understand that this is an audit log trigger, let's see what happened. Suppose that we launch this transaction, delete, California put a tax on whatever product, therefore we cannot, we decide to do not have any distributor from California, okay? So this is the policy of the new policy of the company. So in this case, what happened? Distributor, look at this also. Look at this. Look at this. That the trigger that we are concerned now, we are studying now, is on the part table, and the user modified the distributor table. Okay. So what happened here? How many we have Jones? That is no longer one of our distributors. Okay. We remove this table. Is there referential integrity? Yes. Referential integrity, what says? On delete set default. What happened then on the part table thanks to the referential integrity? Suppose that default is 1, 2, 3, 4, the new default supplier. So there will be Jones in the first row, Jones in the last row that will be changed by 1, 2, 3, 4. After the update of the part table, the trigger executes, okay for that? What does the trigger does? Then?
I have one question actually. The old table in this case is the same as the deleted from the other. Okay. So yeah, it counts the 2 lines that were updated.
Does the user modify this table? No, but you know, you get the idea, or you remember what we talked already about the, we accumulate in the transition tables, like inserted or deleted, all the modifications, not only by the user, but by any sequence of triggers. So here, even if the user didn't do anything, we have logged that bill modified by indirectly 2 tuples of the part table. Okay for that? SQL triggers, you know, I already have enough. Worked with this example. Did you understand well this mechanism of how we typically do computed columns, calculated columns in SQL or not? Maybe I will explain this example again. So this is a traditional way to have calculated columns in whatever database. Suppose that you have a table books like Amazon, and we have quantity sold there, which is a derived column. I don't want to compute by hand how many units I have sold of this book until now. I will declare, I would like to have this computation done automatically by the database. Okay? Now I have an orders table. The order ID by customer, this amount at this order date. And then we have the order detail table, as we have seen this morning. This order ID has this title ID. I bought 3 units of the last book of that author. Okay for that? How do we do a trigger that automatically computes the quantity sold? That is the problem. Okay? So at the beginning, I entered a new book on the that has been published. Quantity sold, of course, would be 0. Each time an order is inserted, updated, or deleted, I need to put into this calculated table the right number. Okay, for that, this is the business requirement. Have you experienced that into the lab session or not yet? No. So you get the idea. How do we do that? It's kind of a pattern. Let's call it a pattern to have calculated columns with triggers.
Sorry?
Yes.
So the API or user or something, when book is bought by something, then it changes the book orders, right? The last one.
So of course you get the thanks for putting. Of course you don't write SQL queries when you are ordering on Amazon. You have a nice interface, but sooner or later this nice interface will send a SQL query to the database.
Yeah, but it modifies the last table, or not?
And then in this it will modify the orders and the books order table. You have ordered 2 units of this book and 3 units of this other book. So you will put 2 new lines here, and then automatically the trigger will update the book quantity sold. Okay for that? The problem statement is clear for everyone? So now let's put it into practice. So create trigger, update, book, quantity sold. This trigger is associated to the table book orders. Okay, for that? Book orders is...
Every time we have a new line in the folder, we just update books.
Look at this, after insert, update or delete.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, every time we modify book order.
Every time I modify book order, I put everything the SQL code which is after the ask keyword. Okay, for that, let's analyze this query. Look at, there are two queries. If exists something, the begin end. If exists something, begin end. If you already have seen, they are quite similar. What changed between the two blocks? The sign here, there is a plus over there is a minus here. What else changed between the two blocks? Inserted or deleted. So let's see, every time there is a book order, so every time I enter a new line here, suppose I enter for this title ID 3 units. Okay? So I go here, if exists, select star, suppose that my table book orders, my inserted and deleted table, let's put it inserted first. I'm only in inserted, I have for this book 1, I have 3 units. For this book 2, I have 5 units. Okay for that? This is all my transaction. You are on the Amazon and you buy this, and this. So how does this work? I have inserted, you will have all the lines of your order. There are millions of books in Amazon. This is why it is important I only select star from inserted and not select star from books order. So I only concern by these 2 lines of my order. So this is very fast. I don't need to, I don't need to go through the millions of books in Amazon. Then I say begin update books, no books order. I update books. And can you explain me how this update works? This is plain SQL, so you should be able to understand that.
It just calculates the amount
Why it is written like this? There is a sum, there is a group by, there is a sum there. There is a where, title, in, etc. Can you explain me all the nuances of this update?
No, I mean, title inserted, we should update the specific book, right?
Yeah, so we have a title would be book 1 here.
As you said, it's just plain SQL.
Yes.
But explain it to Charlotte.
Yeah, explain to Charlotte.
She doesn't speak SQL.
I mean, there would be like a lot of books with the same title, so that's why we do the sum.
Yes, suppose that at the beginning you have book 1, 3.
Yeah.
And later on you have, no, finally I would like also 2 additional, then book 1, 5.
Can I have this one question? Is it actually a good idea to use title? Because the books can have same title, but they can be totally different. Why
Let
shouldn't
me
we-
see, I'm looking.
Why-
Title ID, my ID is title ID is the key of this table.
Title, where title ID is out. Title ID, so it's ID, right?
It's the
It's
keyword,
just title.
it's the key. But indeed, this is a right question to be asked. So then what?
It's just by ID update.
So when I have 2 by chance, if I have 2 orders with 2 lines of order with the same book, I will 3 plus 5, 8. So that select sum the quantity from inserter, where, title ID, etc. So the problem, look at this here, updates works line by line in SQL. So for each line, I have the first line of the book. If it concerns the book 1, then I get all the number of quantities of all book 1 in my current order. Okay for that? Then I have 8 quantity, set quantity sold is whatever value we have now, plus 8 But should I update all the books? No, I only update the books where are also in inserted. So basically, I only modify B1 and B2.
Here, inserted and deleted is some tables that exist, right?
Are these the transitory tables, temporary tables that are accessible only during the trigger, that collects all the modifications of this table in the current transaction. Okay for that? So here I do this every time it's an inserted, suppose.
Sorry, is there a service when I need to teach like in 2 minutes and I think I forgot my service?
Please go in. You can move whatever. Sorry, not worry.
I can't find it. That's embarrassing. No, I can't see it. I can't find it. Thank you.
Don't worry. So you get the idea of the first inserted, of the first block of the if inserted. Can someone quickly say how does the deleted work? So in which situation the deleted works?
If we cancel our orders.
If we cancel, suppose that we do not cancel our order, this is the current state, and finally say, finally these 5 additional books of these 5 of this book 1, I don't need it anymore. So then deleted will contain this line that I have removed. Suppose that book 1 I no longer want the book 1. So I delete both tables, both rows from the book 1. Again, if there is something in deleted, what happened? I take the originally, when this entered the database, I added 8. Now I have to put back 8 again because I'm no longer sending this book. Okay? So same idea, quantity sold minus. You get the idea from the insert and the delete. And then what happened on the final case? Suppose that everything is working well and you have this order, and then you say, I don't want 5, but I want 8 units for B2. What do we have in inserted and what do we have in deleted? In inserted we have 8, in the deleted 5. Do we enter into the 2 blocks? Yes. Does it work in the update case? Can you explain intuitively, because it seems like magic for many of here, many of person here, how does it work with 8, 5 and the entering in 2 blocks, and the end result will be correct or not? Suppose that at the beginning in the table here you have a B1 200. We have sold 200 units of book 1. At the beginning we have this, book 2. At the beginning we have this order, and then suddenly this 5 becomes an 8. What happened there? Can you explain the process? How do we enter if you want?
I mean, since there is a row involving certain deleted, first we'll enter in the first if, we'll increase the amount by 8.
So when I'm your secretary. So when we enter, we have 200. If we execute the first insert, we have 208.
Then in the second update, we will decrease by 5.
In the second update, we decrease by 5, but we have 203. Is that the correct number that we need to keep? You get the idea why it is the correct number? Because these 5 were already included here at the first time. And therefore, we need to do the delta between 8 minus 5 will be 3, so we get into the right. Does it work when in the other way around, when we have from 5 to 2? So you need to verify. I mean, it works going up. Does it work going down? So at the beginning we're 5 and then we have 2. Let's do the computation. When we enter here, we have 2, or then we get 202. And in the delete, we obtain how many? 197. Is that the correct figure that we need to obtain when we move from 5 to 2 here? So you get the idea. So this is a pattern. I mean, I don't even invent it myself. I found it a very useful one, so then I use it systematically every time I need to have an updated column. Very easy done by the database itself. It works in all possible cases.
So
Yes?
if we update, how is it gonna look at it? As an inserted or deleted?
Both. You have in an inserted, you will have 5, no, sorry, in the old table,
Okay.
you will have 5 in the new table, so in the deleted you will have 5, in the inserted you will have 2. Oh, any question in this respect? Okay. Time. It's already 6 p.m. So see you next time then. Have a nice, we see for some of you see tomorrow, and you will have a lab session about that this Friday, this Thursday.